Good afternoon, sir.
You guys are really rocking, doing an excellent job.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
you so much. All with your support, guidance, and blessings, sir.
And Srinivasan sir, keep on saying some good things so that Somani sir will follow.
Sir, it is all his blessing, sir. It is all his guidance.
Yeah, but he's telling only to you. To me, he's not. So I'm very upset.
When I tell you, you have earplugs.
So we're live now.
भारतीय उत्पादों को खरीदने वाले हर एक कस्टमर का दिल भी जीतना। हमारे प्रोडक्ट्स क्वालिटी में जितने बेहतर होंगे उतनी ही ताकत देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को मिलेगी।
बहुत मजबूत नींव स्किल इंडिया मिशन की इस देश में पड़ी है। भारत के इन प्रयत्नों पर भारत के अंदर और भारत के बाहर लोगों का आकर्षण बढ़ा है। रोजगार और उद्यम की सारी संभावनाएं यदि आज बनी हुई हैं तो उसमें स्किल इंडिया डिपार्टमेंट से, स्किल इंडिया मिशन से भी उनका सीधा नाता है।
Hello and greetings of an immersive afternoon. I Sonam Ambe, Chief in Pedagogy. At Ethos ASH, warmly welcome all the dignitaries, our esteemed panelists, to the Plumb Skill Expo 2021. Today's panel discussion deliberates on architectural expectations and MEP realities. I would now like to welcome Mr. N. Rajiv, who has passionately conceived and curated this series with international speakers. He is the Director of Indian Plumbing Skills Council, the National Vice President of Indian Institute of Interior Designers, and the Ambassador for the International Federation of Architects and Interior Designers. Professionally, Rajiv is the shareholder and MD of Spanish multinational EPSA for the Middle East and SAARC region. So without much ado, over to you, Rajiv.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
I always start with the same thing. Let's make it an interactive session. Let's make it lively. Respected viewers from the Indian Plumbing Skills Council and our respected Dr. R.K. Somani, respected panelists from FICCI, and the other fellow friends of fraternity. Plumb Skills Expo opened on Wednesday by the Honorable Minister for Skilling, Dr. Mahendranath Pandey. As per the vision of our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi ji, the aim is to make India a plumbing hub in the global ecosystem, be it for skilled manpower, be it for products, be it for technologies, or be it for JV ventures around the world. I think we are in the right direction. with 30 days of an expo going live with all international companies participating, roundtables, CEO meetings. Yesterday we had an Indo-UAE CEO meeting, which was so conclusive, different training session, plumbers attending, and we have till now registration about 130,000 plumbers and related fields, and the number is still growing. Along with the various sessions, we had curated this web series, especially to bring in international speakers. And obviously the first topic has to be interesting. And we took the most, what do you call, how can I say, to the, let's say the most debated subject, MEP versus architects. This is a field where we can discuss, we can deliberate. It's a unique theme, it's a daring theme, it's a debatable theme. And we have got the stalwarts of the industry. We did 12 trial runs. I had to off my system because the Zoom has already started. And when we have such an event, normally tomorrow's technical session I am moderating, but this is too explosive and I don't have the skills to negotiate to moderate such an event. So I brought in architect Ravindra Kumar, who is known all over the world, who is an amazing guy. He's a bit crazy guy, but a known figure in the design fraternity. I don't know what his secret is, but he's a charmer. He has put 8 to 10 questions, which, my God, it's amazing. And I think what we should learn from him is that I think he's so efficient because at the age of 48, he's still a bachelor. I don't know whether that is a reason. But anyway, it's my proud pleasure and privilege to welcome Ravindra Kumar as the moderator. Sonam, my colleague, will be introducing everybody. The panel, I've got architect Matthew Thomas, a known figure in the Middle East, with Turner Middle East, now doing the phenomenal Guggenheim Museum in Abu Dhabi. I've got Subraya, another leading architect in this part of the world. I've got the head of Volta, Suresh Kumar. I've got the respected Aranjit Singh Bella of RSP, needs no introduction. He could find time to be with us. We have got Srinivasan, a known figure in the MEP field. So what more, what I can say? I don't say debate, I said just fight it out, let's see. The second point is we are not showing any presentations, we are not showing anything because it's a round table. The objectives of the round table are met when people speak from the heart. I'm sure Ravindra Kumar is a better debater than me, a better panelist than me, better moderator than me. So Ravindra Kumar, I leave it to you. Sonam will not be sharing any slides. Everybody speaks for himself. And I have not left any panelists, I presume.
No, thanks a lot, Rajiv.
And I pass it on to Sonam, who has been our person for coordinating all these events. She looks simple and nice. She is an architect from JJ College of Architects and an MPhil. And she will be leading us through the introduction of the panelists so that you understand how powerful the panelists. I see in the list a lot of people. I see Balagopal Menon, I see Mahendra Komineni. And I think we till now have about 300 to 400 people watching this. So all the best. Thank you very much. If the event is good, thanks to me. If the event is bad, thanks to Sonam. Over to you, Ravindra Kumar. Before I give it to Sonam, I would like Somani sir to say a word because without him, the Plumbing Skill Council would never have started. And he will never speak good about me. So, okay, over to Somani sir.
Thank you, Rajiv, setting the tone. I don't know why you are so much against me. But anyway, when I talk good about you, you got earplugs. So don't blame me. Thank you, Rajiv. It's a wonderful panel. And I would like to listen as a student, although I'm not an architect, nor an MEP designer, but I'm a manufacturer of sanitary ware and glass bottles and other things. So I have nothing much to add except listening to the various speakers and the question and answer sessions. Thank you very much, Rajiv.
Over to you, Sonam.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you, Mr. Somani. As most of you would know, the intent of this session is to bring to the fore practices for integrated project delivery that will help reduce the gaps in execution. We are doing so through an online face-off, the debate that Rajiv talked about between architects, engineers, and consultants, the experts here. The session rests in the able hands of architect Ravindra Kumar, who has diligently curated the discussions covering all aspects of roles, responsibilities, BIM systems, taking inference from the past and present scenarios to urge the panel to share their take on the best practices. Architect Ravi dons many hats. He heads design at Venkatraman Associates. He's also the principal architect at Pragroup Architecture and Urbanism. He's the president of Rangalok, a not-for-profit organization running a school for the underprivileged. His strength has been in providing innovative design solutions to emerging project trends in Asia. He is an avid traveler and has covered more than 160 countries from his bucket list. Ravi is known for his keen understanding of the complex needs of urbanity and its reconstruct for innovation in design and ideation. Ravi has been joined today by five well-known personalities in the architecture and MEP field. Calling out alphabetically, we have Mr. Arunjot Singh Balla, Mr. Matthew Thomas, Mr. V. Srinivasan, Mr. Architect Shubhriya Kalaru, and Mr. Suresh Kumar. Now, a quick introduction to our esteemed panel as we ensure that we don't take much time with these important formalities and leave more time for the meat of the matter, our panel discussion. Our first panelist, architect Arunjot Bhalla, has more than 26 years of experience as a design professional in India and abroad. He's the managing director of RSP, and as one of the founding professionals of RSP India, Arunjot has been fully involved in all aspects of the company's growth. Over the years, he has worked on a wide range of projects, including IT campuses, commercial, retail, residential developments, and interiors and large-scale master plans. Welcome aboard, Architect Bhalla. Our second panelist, architect Matthew Thomas, is the project head with Turner International Middle East. A versatile and recognized project construction management professional, Matthew has been involved with some of the landmark projects in UAE. He has been engaged on project delivery of mixed-use mega developments like the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, Dubai Creek Harbor Development, Uptown Dubai, Eastern Mangroves, and Dubai Maritime City. Welcome, Architect Matthew. Our next panelist, Mr. Vishwa Nif Srinivasan, established Synergy Infra Consultants Private Limited in the year 1996 and worked on various projects like healthcare, residential, commercial, retail, IT, besides defense projects and space projects of national importance. An architectural and electrical engineer by qualification, Mr. Srinivasan was the founder president of Fire and Security Association of India Hyderabad chapter and also past chair of IPA Hyderabad chapter. Welcome, Mr. Srinivasan. Architect Shubhriya Kalkaru, our next panelist, is the director of John R. Harris Partners in Dubai. Notable projects that he has worked and led include HSBC bank refurbishments across UAE, Deutsche Bank refurbishment, KSA retail developments in Dubai Festival City, Haptur Palace Hotel, Dubai, Sharjah English School, USA Pavilion, Expo 2020, and various ultra-luxury private villas in UAE. We welcome you to the session, Architect Shubhriya. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Suresh Kumar. He is the Vice President and Head of International Operations Business Group of Voltas Limited. He's one of the veterans in the field of engineering in Middle East and has been with Voltas for nearly 32 years. He has worked at various levels, right from space research projects in Sriharikota to information technology projects from Kerala, Bangalore. In 1998, he moved to Saudi Arabia and has been responsible for many mega projects in Abu Dhabi and Saudi. So, wow, that was an inspiring panel. And I look forward to the discussions. I formally hand over the virtual stage to you, Architect Ravi Kumar, to take the proceedings forward.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back with Rajiv to host or to participate on the webinar. Thank you, Rajiv, for inviting me and the panelists. I will not do much do's on the panelists, but I must thank Rajiv. I mean, you provide the country sitting as the head of both Middle East, Africa, Asia, you know, not only on ISPA, but on many organizations which steer constitutional sort of verticals of what must program architecture or interiors or trade or plumbing. So I think we must congratulate the man and his mission and his interest to create more forums to such discussions. So thank you, Rajiv. To take the discussion forward, we had a couple of short deliberations, and I would like to open the discussion and ask Arun to comment on the opening note. Is architectural engineering, as we would call as a word, an oxymoron? I mean, is there a huge difference between an architect, the way he would program, ideation and engineering as one would want to program architectural, understanding of engineering. Arun, I request for your comment.
It's not an oxymoron, I would say. As the building trades and complexities have developed over time, definitely for sure, the engineering fraternity has a better appreciation of how an architect's mind works and what are the creative impulses there. And on the other hand, architects have over time developed a healthier appreciation, and sometimes to their entire dismay, if they don't have that appreciation, things just don't work out. Because a building is not only about looking beautiful, a building has serious functional aspects which might be invisible to the user's eye, but without them the building does not work. So no, not an oxymoron, but my immediate comment is that it is now blending, but the specialists stay in their positions. Architects have to do what they have to do, and the engineers do well what they do. And one stepping into the other's shoes and the other way around is not going to work. They cannot be at loggerheads. They have to work harmoniously with each other to realize at the end of the day a good and successful project. For simpler projects, if you were to really go back, then really if you were to go into even B towns, C towns, villages, there are no such terminologies. There is no architect, there is no engineer, there is no MEP engineer, there is a mystery. And he knows what to do and he goes and gets it done. It is only when the complexities arise and we move into large scale projects, then we come and have debates like this. Such is the nature of the beast, and that's what we reckon with. I would like to hear others what they think of this. But I am of the opinion that each in his own special role and having a healthy working knowledge of each other's capabilities and capacities is the way to ensure a good product.
I think you've been pretty accurate. Running a very large practice with more than 300 plus architects, or when I look at our own practice where I have more than 240 people plus, we need to make sure the engineering part of the buildings are accurate, especially in this part of Asia. I mean, we have a very powerful artist that sort of procreates this whole program, but at the same time, we want to make sure that things don't go into the doldrum, and we don't want to unnecessarily sort of, swing the magic wand. But having said that, I want to ask Mr. Srinivasan for your introduction and comment on the same subject.
Yeah. I would like to say one thing, Mr. Ravindra Kumar. Both are very important actually for completion of the project. Everybody has got, as Mr. Aranjot Singh Saab has told, everybody has got their own roles. But the understanding of other subject will definitely help in coming out with, and resolving the issues. If an architect understands the basics of structural and MEP, I'm sure the project can be done very well. And the same way, if MEP engineer has got some aesthetic sense, how it should, try out and then probably develop a better solutions in the thinking in the minds of, architects, I think that will also add a value. See, ultimately, we're all working for a client together and a project has to be delivered together. And definitely, architect has to be the captain of the ship. The thing what we have noticed is where architects take the lead role and then they coordinate with all the other things, the project comes out very well, definitely. But where architect is unable to coordinate, I'm sure I think that is going to be a difficult situation for everyone. And architects are also guided by, the client's requirements with respect to project timelines or costing issues and things like that. And most of the cases, the problem where it happens is with most of the senior architects and experienced people, we never face any problem. Usually, whatever the requirements are there, even before I look at, I look at a project, I have all the requirements, already taken care. I looked at one of the IT projects, 1 million square feet and above. I have very limited scope there to work actually, except for my spaces. Even he has given me all the spaces and shafts and everything. So that will definitely, helpful for us. And the same way, wherever there are challenges, the most of the cases, what we find is most of the young architects who are not exposed, because India, we look at, different kinds of projects, different kind of architects. And this is one thing which is now picking up, I don't know, really, even for the MEP consultants, we have different consultants like electrical consultant, plumbing consultant, or air conditioning consultant, but there are very few MEP consultants who have got complete knowledge on all these subjects where they themselves can coordinate. So ultimately, I would say based on the experience and their knowledge levels, definitely the projects are done well.
I see your point, Srinivasan, where as long as a practice has an accurate process, I think most of those answers, and if they adopt
Yes.
technology, most of those programmatic needs of how you must include most of the engineering and architectural intent to gets resolved to a very large extent. But I would bring in architect Matthew Thomas, because he is dealing with a 92-year-old super senior architect, Frank Gehry. I mean, it's a super pride, Matthew, that we have you on board here. I mean, you are building the most spectacular architectural marvel for the century that will happen in Abu Dhabi, and heading the whole sort of program and project management. You must be a Hercules in some of the different format of shoe, and to deal with Frank Gehry must not be an easy cup of tea, especially he being 92 years. I would love to hear from you, your definition of this oxymoron.
But you didn't say the project name.
I'll let Matthew talk about it.
Okay, thank you, Ravi, and thank you, Rajiv. Thanks for having me on board. Having heard Mr. Aranjot Singh Bhalla and the other panelists, like, Srinivasan and everything, I'll go back to the fact, like, and this is, though I'm trained as an architect, I've spent most of my time as a project manager, managing projects where we bring this together to life. So I'm going to start with the fact that even though Mr. Bhalla doesn't think it as an oxymoron, I would call it as a love-hate relationship. Now, you want to coin that as an oxymoron, that's a different thing. And reasoning behind this is again to what we had previously discussed, that the architect's vision is realized through the structural engineer's input and followed by the MEP engineer's input or the disciplines that breathe life into his vision. Now, when we look at it, we all understand that it is the MEP systems that bring life and gets the thing going. But what happens is there is this beautiful structure that, or a dream that has been envisaged by the architect. And what comes out at the end is something like, pockmarked with realities, like, which were never envisaged in the first instance, or the architect doesn't see that. So that's where, like, for me, the thing is, like, I work with developers within this region, and to cite one of the leading developers here is a government-owned entity, and there's a chief development officer who's an architect. Every time he walks into a finished space, his first question is, why do I have so much access panels? Why can't they get it in line? And as much as a project manager, I want to justify and tell him that this is required to access and service the space. I know in my heart that, like, somewhere if the architects and the engineers, especially the MEP disciplines, if they talk together, we would not be seeing this happen. So, and this could be done much at a design stage. So what I see is, and what I perceive is, collaboration is missing. Like, everybody is living at his own pedestal, trying to do his job, getting it across. And this, when I'm talking about large scale projects, I'm not talking about a small unit or a small house or a home. Like, when we talk about mixed use developments, large scale projects, everybody has to come together and collaborate. And because, thing is, when we discover these issues in the built form, it actually becomes cost prohibitive, or like, it's counterproductive to rectify that. So when we are at the design stage, if you're looking together, working together, and like spending that time, it tends to bear fruit, and it will, like, bring better results is what I feel like. And what I have seen through practices, what happens is everybody wants to kick the ball down the line. What they want to say is, okay, I've done my bit, the architect has done his bit, the engineer has done his bit in terms of the systems, what is required to do that. Let's kick the ball down the line. Let's leave it for the contractor to deliver the job. And the contractor sitting there saying that, okay, I can't build it, I can't do this, I can't do that. Okay, we as project managers come together, try to find a solution, but it's always a compromise that could have best been dealt at the design board than coming at the construction stage. That's where my thing. And to put it all together, like, Ravi, one of your thoughts was like, is it about collaboration? Is it about technology? What I feel is the construction industry has not lived up to the growth in technology that has been over the years. We have tried to be like difficult, reluctant to embrace technology. Technology, whether it be like, you talk about car production or manufacturing, you see technology, those trends have gone much, much ahead than what we are. Construction, we still want to talk about the rudimentary style of like going back to the old ages and like now trying to work out. Why don't we embrace technology? And coming to this point again, like, Ravi, talking to about Frank Gehry. Frank Gehry is a man who went all the way back to France, the aerospace software, CATIA, developed it. He models everything in the 3D space. His visions are nothing straight, nothing works. Like, if you look at it, if you ask me as a layman, I go there's nothing works because, his university design is a crumpled paper bag. Like, come on. Or it's like, like some contractors say he has thrown toys out of a pram, like, and it's all stacked there and now we need to build that. But he's visualized that through the use of technology. And when we do not understand technology, he understood it. And that's where his success is involved. So what I'm telling is now we have technology at our hand, which we are still reluctant to embrace. Maybe it's the cost, but I don't think that necessarily is the case because if you look at it, it has moved so much ahead the line that if we work during the design phase, if we have a client who's ready to embrace it, and if we work together, there's no stopping us, like, And the best part is technology offers us the solution to see that now in that realm, or like, we talked about virtual reality, augmented reality, immersive reality. Now we are even talking about HoloLens technology, like, where we can see that in the virtual realm, get it all sorted out, show it to the client, move forward, and get it delivered. So that brings like, so we are looking at development at a much better level at this point, like, and avoiding those issues where the architect and the engineer contradict and the service disciplines contradict. So we can come together. And the last thing is, like, we need to have empathy in this profession. There is nobody superior. We come together to deliver. That's my point here.
Thank you. Thank you. That's impressive. That's the man who's going to deliver the Guggenheim in a couple of months, should I say, Matthew, or it's a couple of years?
Couple of years. That will be at least 6-7 years before we realize everything and sort it out. And I think Suresh is excited to say that on that front. I'm sure, because a lot of people will have this thing that is that really a vision that we can realize, like,
Probably one of the most complicated projects ever built in the century. I mean,
Exactly.
Jean Hotel will look very, very, simplistic and very, very mundane compared to what you're going to make. And we are very glad, Matthew, and you're a great pride of the nation that you're building such a spectacular project for the world to watch and enjoy. So glad that you're here. I want to now kind of also add the next question into the addition. I'll invite Mahendra. It's been a very long time since we grouped up together, Mahendra. He's an architect and engineer. To continue this discussion, holding the same key aspects of whether engineering and architecture are sort of opposites of some different coins or the same coin, or is it aligned together, or do you think an architect is also an engineer? Coming from a man who's probably worked on the maximum number of large-scale Middle East projects. Mahendra.
Yep. Architect has to be an engineer. When it starts his architecture classes, it starts with basic engineering. You guys take your set squares and do, right? You draw straight lines, you measure angles. It's engineering, part of engineering. An architect is an engineer. Can't be a layman.
That's perfect. That's perfect resolution. And I think it answers most of the wedge question. Now, let me bring Suresh Kumar. He had a lot of issues of disconnect as to how an architect behaves or operates or programs his drawing and prioritizes things beyond engineering. And that's where the didactic posture appears. Suresh?
Yeah, in fact, good evening, good afternoon to all of you. I think, when India wins, we say so-and-so is an architect of the victory. And when you talk about the spin bowling, we'll say somebody has engineered the ball, So the architects and the engineers are unavoidable components of a successful project. But let's just step back and see what's happening in this construction field. If you look at the Far East, we have got fragmented MEP. Like MEP is different packages it works, and the architects probably has got his own package, everything. But when it comes to India, I think we are still in a primitive way where, like Mr. Srinivasan rightly said, there are so many consultants within MEP works and they themselves are not coordinated, and it becomes a huge liability for an architect to coordinate everything and put together to the customer. But when it comes to Middle East, which in my opinion, having traveled everywhere, I feel it's more advanced in terms of construction. Like Mr. Matthew rightly said, the PMC, the project management company, actually takes over the project lead position, where the architect, engineer, everybody become a part of the team. It becomes like a cricket team where everyone plays the role properly and the PMC is able to integrate it. So I'm not a strong believer of hierarchy because the leadership is, it's a lead without title. Everybody has to lead at various facets of the project. But when it comes to the clashes, yes, the building has to perform. The beauty of a building, the facade of a building, the false ceiling or the interior, these are all static. It's all got that first attraction. But later on, if the lights are not proper, you have to always understand there are people going to reside inside. If those people, the end user is not going to be, the end user experience is not good, it's not going to be successful. So if it's a hospital, we are doing it. It has to be purpose built for avoiding the certain issues or for an operation theater to run properly. So it's a responsibility of we as a construction professional to engineer and architect a project and deliver it to the purpose for which it has been designed. So there is a lot of understanding of each other's position is required. And like Matthew said, the technology today has more gone into, I'm very happy that construction today started adopting technology, which otherwise construction and agriculture was too field where the technology was not coming in. Now the technology is coming in, and there are a lot of platforms which are available for us to communicate. The workspace has become not an IT person's language, it is now a construction person's language where we can interact each other, we can collaborate each other and come out with a better product.
Thank you. That's the man who heads Voltas for the whole of Middle East, and he's going to also deliver Guggenheim, managing all the heating and ventilation and the technology aspect, artificial intelligence that is creeping into our space and work that we can do. Here, I would like to request Mr. Somani for a comment. He's seen more life and more architecture, more engineers. I'm sure you term them all as fools, but Somani, I would love to hear from you, your comment.
What comment can I offer? I am not in this field, but I'm listening to the complications that you have. And coordination, I think, is most important.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolutely. Subroy, he heads a very large practice in the Middle East, and I'm glad that you're here on the panel. In some of our conversation, you did mention the qualitative aspect of change that has happened, including the way architects or all our practices are including BIM platforms or rhinos, or trying to model most of the projects that we want to envisage into different dimensions and qualify that so that we argument and control error, and we remove this whole posture of it being an oxymoron, so that we just make it man-proof or woman-proof, So what is your comment? You were a great search for that idea. Your comment, Subroy.
Thanks, Ravindra. Yeah, I mean, see, I'm a firm believer of integrated approach to design, especially in the large projects of the size and volume and complexity. I think integrated approach is the right approach. And I actually go back to the comment made by Suresh. I mean, see, in the current, there is no hierarchy in terms of players in this in this profession, in the design community, though it's engineers or architects or project managers. I think that collaborative spirit has to be there, and the leveling fields in terms of the tools that you use is probably a collaborative tool like BIM or a similar tool. So basically, right, by adopting say integrated approach, wherein the technology is adapted, and right from the day one, all the stakeholders of the design become stakeholders and become active in the design process, so that this kind of a miscoordination can be avoided. So I mean, see, from in my own career, it's been close to 2 decades. I've seen how the design process is evolving. I personally see that architects are better appreciating the engineering aspects when they start using tools like BIM. Like, I mean, the design processes evolved since few years. I think, the architects used to design in 2 dimension. Now everything is being designed in 3 dimension. I see in my own practice, the understanding of the engineering aspect is getting a lot better in architects. So they kind of appreciate the services that go into the building, the structures that go into the building, the various aspects they come together in the form of a BIM model, which eventually delivers the project to its perfection. So again, my take on that is integrated design approach is the right approach, and I think that's the future. And especially the way both the design as well as the procurement is progressing. We are talking about modular buildings now. We are talking about pods. We are talking about totally constructing off-site and then plugging the building back to site. So and also say in terms of 3D printing, in all these technologies, what is important is the full coordination at the design stage, and the only way we can do it is through integrated design approach.
Totally appreciate what you're saying, Subrai. That's what all architects and practices definitely want to aim and achieve. And having done a few macro level projects, I still sometimes doubt the validity of some of these programs. Not that we don't put it into habit. We want to program everything that is possible. Arun, what is your take on this? What do you think? You having managed megalo sort of maniac project, what is your kind of bite on it, Arun?
So, I cannot agree more with what has just been said, that the approach has to be integrated. Technology is something that is bringing an appreciation of each other's abilities and requirements far faster than what it was earlier. BIM has been definitely a game changer in managing to make sure that we have greater accuracy levels, we have better coordination. Now, this whole debate about it kind of says that typically our people at loggerheads. I must say it's not bad. It's a situation where professionals can be at loggerheads, but if they are at loggerheads in the interest of getting the best for the project, that's good. It can be sorted out. And all the tools that we now have at our disposal help us to reach resolution faster. You can virtually depict. So earlier days, Ravi, and even now, and when you take Gary's name, I don't think Gary is encumbered in his head as to, hey, where are the MEP lines going to go, man, and what the structure is going to do. I've not worked with him. I don't know. I've only heard him once in a lecture, and he was pretty much obtuse and obscure. I couldn't understand half of it. But then there is Mr. Matthew there who manages to kind of make sure that whatever, and he mentioned this crumpled paper, and he's bringing it all to life. I don't for 1 minute think that he starts off thinking, hey, my MEP lines are going to go somewhere here or there. We were doing one project with all sharing in our Singapore practice, and that whole bloody thing is made out of all these blocks, Jenga blocks, all over the place. And I was in Singapore and speaking to some of the MEP engineers, and they were cursing that architect. They said, okay, an RSP was project architect there. They said, what the heaven's name is this? The guy goes and plays with some Jenga blocks. That's all he said. He's placed with some Jenga blocks, and he comes up with this vision. And we are the ones who know how to figure out where all the lines are going to go and how the structure is going to happen, you see. But at the end of the day, well, you can make fun and games, and it's a stellar project, and it's a path-breaking project. Now, in path-breaking projects, if architects' creativity was kind of encumbered thinking of these aspects at the beginning, I think we will not have. We will end up with straight-jacketed boxes which are eminently engineered and are very, very functional, and so on and so forth. See, there's an art element here, where you need to have a little bit of a float here. But having said that, once that happens, not having an appreciation of how the building is going to function, not having an appreciation of what good MEP is all about, is going to be stupid. We don't want to be stupid. We want to be just said, integrated. We want to be coordinated, and we want to, at the end of the day, have a successful project that not only says something about talks to your soul, but also meets your bodily requirements. If I might use big words here. So that's where it is. I think it goes in tandem. Sometimes the cart comes before the horse, in the architect said, but that's part and parcel of the process. It's you cannot just say, okay, I'm going to do a painting and the canvas is this and so on and so forth. You've got to float a little bit, but then come down to reality and have an appreciation of engineering as well. That's what I think.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Matthew, what is your comment? You seem to
Yeah, I'm going to say that because I like the way Arunjot presented this stuff. So what I'm going to say here is, yes, there is a difference between signature projects and what is considered as commercial projects, if you may hear me. Now, signature projects are an architect's dream, a desire that he wants to create. Does that mean that it won't function, it won't deliver? No, that's not the case, because we have today capabilities out there, that can cater to making that dream and desire to life, whether we talk about SOM, when he first thought about his structural things, were flow plates, very thin slabs, and when everybody said it's not going to work, or when he talked about a central core and then having micro thin plates, everybody thought it's not going to happen. But there was something that revolutionized that and took it forward. So to put to Mr. Bhalla's words, it's okay, signature projects develop, how do you say, trend-breaking parts. But yes, then at the same time, we also have a certain amount of delivery which is consistent with the market, which is volume, which is production, which we deliver to. That can be evolved and can be delivered across. And I fully agree that technology is there, and we can standardize those templates across. We can bring that across and go for delivery. So we have to make a distinction when we talk about in this platform, whether we are talking about signature projects or we are talking about standard projects. To put it in perspective, if you would say you could deliver a 40 floor or a 50 floor or a 70 floor building in 48 months, or would have been difficult in some period of time, But now with everything changing, with the way we are, we see that it can be done within 24 months or 26 months. Now a project like whatever I'm talking about at this point, we're looking at 44 months. It's quite ambitious, but there's a lot of figurative work to be done. But standardization, coordination, working on commercial projects, let me put it this way, should become a norm, where there are templates. It is for me, it's like the CAD symbols that were mutually available, where as an architect, when I started, I used to draw every door. But now you have that thing, there's a symbol, you just plant it, you scale it, you stretch it, it gets done. Now we have come to a platform and a technology where everything that is required, we know the floor plate, we know the apartment sizes, we can standardize it. And we don't need to make those errors repetitively, and everybody doesn't need to discover it at every stage or every point in time. Yes, for signature projects, yes, we need to spend time, we need to do it. And signature projects, Mr. Bhalla never makes money, neither it makes money for the architect, neither it makes money for the developer, but it brings that attraction, will feel cash in the developer. And this is where I want to bring to the point of Burj Khalifa. I know Suresh was there in delivery. He got paid 4 years later, he said in the start of the speech. Yes, but that whole thing brought a live district out there where we commercialized and everybody made money. It's like talking about the fountain out in Burj Khalifa. The fountain cost, and we were recreating Bellagio. We didn't know how to do it, but we did it. And then that amount of money invested in the fountain might be X million dollars, but what it brought into life was the whole, retail, residential, and everything that, lifestyle economy. And we don't need to make those mistakes in those economy, commercialized part of the market or development is what I would like to say.
I think it's well formatted, but I don't know how much.
I think I should come here now. I think this debate is going into the second phase now. Ravi, I leave you into the harder part of the debates now.
Yeah.
We are touching softer corners. Over to you, Ravi.
Yeah, Rajiv, you want to pose some of the panel, some of the questions that have been sort of popped up from the visitors, or what do you want to do? Because I don't know how much time we have to stretch on.
Ravi, your mic is mute, it seems.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, can hear you.
You're audible.
Yes.
Yeah, should we pull in some audience questions, or I don't know, maybe we don't have.
We are waiting for audience questions to come in.
But I think I see some panelists here. Ravi, it's up to you. You are the moderator. You are the devil's advocate.
I think if Ravi, if you allow me to add on few subjects, I think before the questions we pick up, I think we have to understand while we do commercial projects or the signature projects or the iconic projects, today the situation demands a lot of fire life safety aspects of a building, the customer comforts, the futuristic building. Because see, today with the COVID, I think we've been benefited by COVID because COVID has actually demanded a major change in the concept, the way people are living. In fact, work from home or work from anywhere, the virtual offices. So the technological changes that is required, the flexibility that is required in a building design itself is very high. On top of it, the fire life safety aspects. You have seen a lot of fires and other accidents which have taken place, child safety, which has become a big question in the residential apartments, etc. And even the disabled people, their comforts in even old age people, which they can go into the museums, etc. So I think today the MEP as well as the architects, builders, construction guys, everybody has to look into these aspects actually. So it's time for the entire community to think differently, that all the materials which we select, the way the MEP is designed, everything has to be develop a building which is going to be lifelong safe. That is an aspect I would like to say that it's time for us to think about it. And the second issue is the way the digitization is taking place in the world. Today, people are going to see one thing what we learned in the last 8-9 months is that we don't need to travel so much to have so many meetings. So all that is going to happen. So the building should have the IT infrastructure, the digital infrastructure. There are buildings which will have smaller data centers. So all this is going to happen. So going forward from 2020 onwards, the entire construction field where we are living, either we will become obsolete or we will become modern. And my choice is we all have to work together to become modern, and we should start now defining more innovative solutions to the end user and our customer.
It's a good point that we've brought in so much of complexity into making of our own buildings, bringing this quantum of technology sort of innovation into making our building. But I have a question to Sonam, who heads a large academic and chairs many parts of the university sort of curriculum. When you go back and look at vernacular, go back and look at how people built the pyramids, or people built the sort of megalomaniac temple spaces in our country or in this part of Asia, or even otherwise, the kind of structures that were built with vernacular mindsets where there were no architects, there was just a culture, there was a religiosity, or there was a whole civilization which came together and somehow they got everything right. And what they built is still spectacular, which we cannot imagine to build at all. You cannot build another Taj Mahal. You cannot build another Brihadeshwara temple. Maybe a lot of developers want to do it, but it is impossible to recreate a Cheops pyramid on the planet again. Now, having said that, it was only post-Renaissance that the architect was put on a pedestal. Until then, there was no idea of an architect. The architect never existed before Renaissance. Now, it was there in the Vedas and the scripts when we go back to Indian mythology. But having defined that, once the architect and the engineering consultancy came into picture, they just complicated the program and process and it's just made the process complicated. Otherwise, the buildings are all silly. What do you think, Sonam?
So firstly, I would say that I know that, of course, after the Renaissance, for sure, architects, master builders as a concept was for sure brought in. But we do have documentations from much earlier times, like Mimar Sinan and those, where there are celebrated architects who did build well-known monuments or that we revere today. Having said that, I think that the process has always been complicated. It was not documented. It's possible that there used to be these fights and these discussions between those who were building the plumbing systems at Mandu, with the aesthetics of which we really appreciate and love. And I'm sure there was a Vastu Shilpakar who would have, discussed with the sculptural engineer who would have, I am sure that there would have been those discussions with expertise, but maybe not the titles that we have right now, because these are for sure important categories and, important subjects that make the whole of a building. So I'm not, it's just that we may have not have documented them, but I'm sure that the process of building has always been as complicated as it is right now.
You think it's not the architects, right? It's only the engineers who messed it all up, right? Because, like what you said, we used to celebrate gutters. We used to celebrate drainage systems.
Yes.
Celebrate, how, water came into homes and houses and how storage systems were done. Today, if I invite Voltas to do the building management system, tomorrow I go to Honeywell, he'll say Voltas is crap. He's not going to agree to any system that's going to be operated by, Voltas.
Ravi, you're confusing between Honeywell and Johnson Control. Don't bring Voltas into it. Voltas is being coordinated. Look at the system integrators.
Look at Suresh face. He's going to disconnect.
No, I totally understand. I'm just using the name here because we have Suresh sitting here, but Voltas I know is operating as a contractor. But
he breathes Voltas. He says from trainee period he has been in Voltas.
Yeah, it's the mother company. So I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I would like to say one thing, sir. Srinivas here. The earlier days, definitely, the buildings were very simple, and I'm sure even probably one engineer used to take care of the things. But today, as Suresh was talking about, when the buildings are becoming very high-rise and more complicated, and there are so many systems that are getting into the building, and there has to be different kind of expertise that has to be get into the project. So I don't think as a single person, for anybody, it is a big difficult issue, right? For an architect or one MEP engineer. So there has to be a collaborative effort. That's what everybody has been talking about. And we also need to look at the operation and maintenance of the facilities, because the unfortunate thing, what we see, the architects are there till the completion of the building. But we are called even after 5 years or 6 years of the completion of the project. There is some issue here, some issue there, and some breaker is stripping. So our life also is becoming, a miserable thing after some time if we don't take care in the beginning.
But Srinivasan sir,
yeah,
I have to come in here. Yesterday during my session, I discussed this point that anything goes wrong, the supplier is at blame. Sometimes we say the MEP consultant is at blame. The project manager telling me, do your job, we are not at blame. The architect
I'll tell you,
we are not at blame. The value engineer says you follow. So I think it's a synchronized effort.
I don't know about other places, Rajiv, but here in India, we are the first people to be called, because I get calls.
No, in Dubai, the supplier is in Dubai, the supplier is the first to be called, because last time we had a trial run which ended up in blows, where Suresh said, we are the ones to be called after 4 years, there is no architect. I said, no, we are the ones to be called at the first place when there is a problem, the supplier.
Right.
I think it's a common responsibility.
If you look at, from that perspective, I would like to say, they definitely, even we have a lot of arguments with many of the architects, even though in the beginning, I was telling very humbly that we all have to work together, but we have difficulties, we have to fight in every project. This is what happens in many of the projects, because the reason I'll tell you, as I told you, it's with many experienced architects who have gained knowledge, practical exposure. There were no many issues because they appreciate things, but it is not the case. Unfortunately, I was told, I'm not sure, but there was no much subjects taught to the architects about MEP requirements or services.
Touching a soft spot. Okay.
Yeah. So this is what is creating a big gap. While planning the projects, this is what I see as a major challenge. I'm not talking about signature projects.
I agree with you, Srinivas.
Yeah.
Basically and fundamentally, I'm an architect, trained as an architect who left it long back.
Yes, sir.
After getting frustrated, saying that the drawing board doesn't match with the delivery.
Yes, sir.
So I fully agree with you that architects do not take cognizance of what is MEP or what is structure. And when the integrated product comes across, it is this architect's vision of a beauty which is pockmarked with all the blemishes.
In
Now,
some
you
of
can't use
the,
fair and
with some of
lovely
the,
here.
we jokingly say,
No,
in
no, but you can't use fair and lovely here because the architect doesn't understand the reticulation.
yes,
Let me tell you about the stuff.
absolutely. That is what I'm talking about.
Yeah, in terms of code updates, we have not built buildings we are building, or rather, let me put it this way, we are building structures and buildings which were not seen 30 or 40 years before. We are doing reticulation in high rises, which were not even envisaged.
Absolutely. True.
So the systems are getting complex. Like, put it an example. When we were the project managers for Dubai Mall, we did not understand how would civil defense or evacuate a person in the case if there was a fire. We did not understand how they would be taken out if there is a fire, what systems would reach, what is mandated. Now things have changed. So this all has to be integrated. And the problem, what is happening is these code updates and the language of the region, the language of the structure, the language of the government infrastructure to save and support has to be integrated into the building, and at the same time has to be understood by the architects.
Correct.
When they design, that has to talk. So I agree that there are a lot of things like, that evolve, which are like signature projects, but standardized projects. Now for us, when we talk about today, India also sees 60 to 70 floor buildings done very easily. It's become a norm. Like, when they look at Bombay, Delhi, everybody wants to do a high rise. But do they understand what is the risk and what is the system's capability required to deliver this high rise? You have mechanical capillary flows. And
That is
unless
what I'm coming to, sir. We are working on a project which is a prestigious project. Unfortunately, it has come late to us after some time, after the basic approvals are done. Now I find out there are no refuge areas for that building. There is no pressurization system for the staircases. There is no cross ventilation.
Talking to guys at our end, taking across the technology, trying to embed it, trying to talk to the authorities, and at the same time coming to forums like this where the architect and the MEP guys get together and converge on ideas on what will work for the building.
Absolutely. And also what I would like to say here, the things like BIM and all, they are basically tools. Probably, once we have the knowledge which has been practiced through BIM, probably we can avoid some clashes and other things. But the basic requirements itself, the knowledge-wise, it has to be understood by both the parties. This is what I think.
Ravi, with your permission, I would like to bring in Mahendra, because 30 years in this sector, architect and MEP. Let's remain on that. Being in the MEP for 30 years, it was difficult for me to make the MEP consultants in India aware of myself. Mahendra, be open. What do you think? Has the architect migrated to the MEP level, or has the MEP migrated to the architect level? Are you comfortable? Are you comfortable? Because 38 years in the Gulf doing buildings, I know you have had problems with architects trying to enforce the systems. This is an open forum.
See,
and you have a Telugu compatriot of Mr. Srinivasan.
My success is I never blame the architect. Whatever is given, I try to go through that.
And don't be commercial, Mahendra. For a change, be open from your heart.
Let us be open.
Open from the heart, Mahendra. Come on, forget everything.
You have to cut a beam. He'll move a beam and give me. So it is. I mean, you cannot change the world, man. The way it is going, we should let it go. And those special projects, you will have problems. You can't avoid them. You have to live with them.
Let me try and be the devil here. See, Matthew and Mahendra and Srinivasan. Having said that, most architects, the moment they come to a whole collaborative discussion, will declare that the consultants have no clue what they want to do. Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
Let me be very honest. I think because it's not about the position of pedestal. We want, forget whether it's a commercial project, it's a signature project. Given a choice, then, we would end up building stacks for life. We would just put one toilet on top of another toilet. You'll have all the shafts totally aligned and just make it completely an engineering proof idea. There's nothing wrong with it. The buildings which I've done 20 years ago, even now, if there's a problem or if there's a huge leak, the first person they call in India is me, is the architect. They call, what's the problem? Having said that, most of the time the architect includes a multifaceted sort of inclusion of vision, ideas that has to conglomerate to make the edifice happen. Today, the Middle East calls for a voyage of experience of architectural ideation, not an engineering ideation. Engineering is given. When we use words collaborative, BIM, etc., these are all tools that we sort of shadow ourselves within and say it's going to happen, it's going to work. But at some point of time, don't you think the engineers or the engineering fraternity has to rechurn, like the way software engineers have started using the word architects in their occupational definition? Now you go to TCS, you go to Microsoft, they have architects, who actually, mentor the ideation of making something. So do you think engineers must recast themselves to understand the aesthetic of engineering than being factual about engineering? I leave this comment open to anyone to comment.
I think, Ravi, you touched a very important point. In fact, what we have as an MEP contractor, we found out the best of the MEP coordinators are the architects who worked with MEP contractors. In fact, the best success we have achieved in most of the project is when we have got an architect on board who works as a mediator between the project architect and the MEP contractor or the consultant. So this is very important. So there is no hierarchy. Again, I say there is no hierarchy here. It's all understanding the requirement. See, yes, a client has paid a huge money to have a beautiful, iconic building. You can't just go and spoil by saying that, I need a pipe protruding outside. But at the same time, the building need to serve the purpose for which it was built. So that is an area where we need to work it out. Of course, I go back to the one of the statements, someone made a comment that today, I think it is an academic interactions are required. We as an MEP contractor, we started now working with a lot of architectural colleges. They are cooperating. So we are actually giving orientation to those architects, the young architects who are yet to get graduated. So they also get an idea. And what is required today's field is a better platform like this, even in an enhanced way, that the architects and MEP can collaborate, discuss each other, brainstorm each other, and come out with solutions. Before I conclude, I would suggest that, Arun knows it, in Singapore, there is something called Building Completion Authority, BCA. What we need in India as well as Middle East is something similar, which is an apex body, which has got a semi-government or a governmental approval available, so that they make everybody to collaborate each other and come out with common solutions, which is good for the industry, good for the country. So that it's time for us to do it. In fact, I really appreciate BCA do a lot of research, lot of workshops every year with various countries to ensure that they bring a better technology, better collaborative platform to the industry.
Suresh and Ravindra, if I could just may add a little bit. I do think that the onus is on both architects and engineers. Architects have to be technocrats. We can't just limit to architecture. We need to have a good understanding of all other engineering systems. That's the key to good collaboration. Meanwhile, there are other aspects which are more related to the life cycle of the building. The buildings, as a designer, you finish your commitment of a design in a short duration, say 6 months to a year or 2 years. And then the building has a life cycle of 40, 50, 60 years or up to 100 years. So both designers, as well as the architects, as well as the engineers should, the life cycle cost of the building and the maintenance of the building is a crucial aspect, which actually sometimes we miss it out because, you finish your design, you deliver it, and the contractor delivers, and you just walk out. But there is a life cycle process involved, and there's a cost involved for which we most of the time we kind of move ourselves away from that responsibility. So just how Suresh said, the organization like BCA, there has to be some kind of a body or a system where the building's performance is also evaluated. I think that's also quite a key.
I see your point, but still we are trying to dwell on the safe space. Arun, in some of your project experiences, how many times have you really stood up and wanted to throttle the engineers and make them believe?
See, I don't know. I don't have that temper anymore. I used to lose it completely. And with experience, you see the other point of view also very clearly. So how many times, it's a story of the past. It's not something that I like to do anymore now. And when you're younger, you would like to do that. But let me just bring something to the table. We are talking architects, we are talking engineers, and I just hark back to what Sonam was mentioning a little while back. The term used to be master builder. It was not architect or engineer, and the master builder encompassed all of it. So it encompassed the architect, it encompassed all the engineering practices as relevant in those times. I would think that if the architects aspire to be master builders and the engineers aspire to be master builders, you would have a greater meeting of minds, because you would automatically go forward and try to learn aspects that you don't know. Part of this throttling business and losing our shirt comes from ignorance. Part of it comes from the fact that we are saying, okay, I am the leader of the show, and how dare you tell me where this damn pipe is going to go and my elevation is going to get me in a mess and so on and so forth. And then we lose our shelter. But if we start thinking that if we had better appreciation of the other's art and engineering, it takes us somewhere in a positive manner. And that's what is in my mind. Ever since you floated this topic, Ravindra, and it's something that stayed with me. It's become over specialized. Specialization is required, but egos have kicked in as well. And you cannot not have a leader of the show, right? And many times it is the project managers. I must tell you, Mr. Matthew, that I sometimes want to throttle them as well. So
it's good, Matthew. You don't job in India.
So it's all about throttling, but it's okay. Positive throttling.
Matthew,
I'm going to say something here.
Question. Wait, Matthew.
Okay, good.
As an extension, I'll let you comment, but I also want to posture this question to you. How many times did you want to sack the architect? I want to know on your project.
Okay, I take it from both ways because Mahinder especially has seen me from a very close context. He's seen me how I operate, and he's one man who can vouch, how I operate and how I do.
I think he hates you with respect to technical qualifications.
Okay. Leaving that aside, what I feel, Arun and Ravi and everybody, see, the problem that was when we started architecture, we never had architecture in our country. We started with engineering, then came architects, and architecture went into a sculpture, interior design, all those things. In the meantime, in the regression of the education, they left other systems. If you see, the start of the topic was with Ravi saying architectural engineering. If you see, if you go back to Egypt and the likes, they talk about architectural engineering, where an architect has to learn about structure, has to learn about MEP, has to learn about everything. But today, our education system within the country is somehow learn something, you become an architect. Then you pick it up, you go up the trade. But unless you have a holistic view of understanding how the whole thing functions, it's quite difficult. And I was one of the victims of that whole thing, where I studied architecture, I did urban planning, but I couldn't understand structure, I couldn't understand MEP. So I got frustrated with architecture because everything I drew was a failure. It could never be created. Then I moved into the realm of project management, where I bought in the architect, the engineer, the structural engineer, the MEP disciplines and everything together. And then I could see how this comes together. But yes, it requires a lot of learning on the way. and you can never stop learning because these things are continuously evolving. And what today dictates this whole growth is if we can bring this curriculum with a passion back into into the students who are learning this, yes, you're bringing life. Otherwise, we can sit here, we can argue till we are blue in the face, but these problems will still continue to prevail because the basic foundations of what we are bringing up doesn't talk holistically. That's where I want to put it at.
I see your point. I see your point. But again, going back to the position, just as a part of experience, you are building one of the most complicated buildings on the planet. How many times have you felt that it was all unnecessary?
Quite a sensitive one. And if I say yes, I'm going Arun's side. If I say no, then I'm going that. Yes. So I won't comment on that. That's quite political. I will. And if this forum is not being recorded, I will say yes, it is not required. But then it is going to live for 100 years. It's a man's vision.
It's on YouTube, Matthew. We need to have the Guggenheim Museum being built. So let's stick to the facts.
No, but I appreciate it.
And maybe please don't provocate my friend.
No. But I appreciate the honesty. No, I agree that most of us as architects, I'm not talking about a less bred or a less intelligent sort of initiation. We are going to discount all that. Somebody's not put a fire exit space, or somebody's forgotten to put a duct for MEP shafts. That is ridiculously stupid. Okay, there's no refuge area. I mean, that is a novice act of building a building without understanding locus bylaws. We are discounting all that. I'm talking about an occupational sort of maturity sort of program that comes into play. And there are a good lot of people who are sitting in the same forum. So, Subraya, I pose this question. How many times have you sort of exercised the idea of, sheer simplicity because you want engineering to be stupid and simple and not intelligent, and given away your architectural sort of bile juice to erupt?
Well, I mean, see, yeah, I mean, see, happened on and off. I mean, a few instances, not that it's not happened. I mean, I give a few years ago, we were doing a school building, a nicely done school campus, and well articulated facade, well planned building, and everything was going well and good until the last month of the project. When I walked into the site, what I could see is on top of it, see, the usual things you do correct. You do your MEP coordination, you do your shaft, you do your MEP space planning. Everything was done to almost to the perfection, except to my surprise or to my shock, the roof of the building was a mess. The first thing that when you approach the building, what you see is, I could see a large MEP plant, the MEP, the ducts, and then the chilled water pipe, all doing so everything that you don't want to see on the building, you could see on the top of the building. So often, in spite of doing everything, some simple things one could miss out in this coordination. The roof was not considered as a part of the architect's area because it's all meant for MEP. So so the MEP engineer tends to do what's most efficient and most cost effective. So at the end, what we got is a beautiful building with a really horrible roof with all the services coming through. So so there have been instances where in spite of doing your best due diligence, there could be some aspects that you miss out that could stay like that forever. So so there have been instances.
I see your point. Let me pose this question to Poonam. Kenneth Frampton, in his book Critical History, states that 1964 or 65 was the death of modernism. There's a beautiful article where one of the most brutal Bauhaus building was demolished, and they declared that modernism comes to an end, and it would be the architecture of the postmodernists and the stylists and vernacular, and there would be tropical modernism. There would be more sort of differentiation of architecture that would be very contextual and not something that is so universally mundane that you could stamp a building either in Paris or in Chandigarh, you know. So there was a position where the whole community took a posture and said, we must stop this, okay? But having said that, even when you look at the architecture that was done post Antonio Gaudi, you know, I sometimes introspect and ask how many of these buildings will see a time which is beyond 80 or 100 years, or 60 or 70 years, or 25 or 40 years, not by the law. You know, I'm not talking about any statutory bylaw, but I'm just talking about just the nature of architecture or the ethos of a building aesthetic that makes us all want to conserve. You know, today we look back at a building which is 14 centuries old, you know, probably 18 centuries old, and we pride at them as heritage, not because it was built in the 2nd century or the 3rd century, also for the reason that it has an intrinsic ability in them that sort of churns, you know, a certain joy space in the Homo sapien. Now, we've not done that, unfortunately. I mean, as an architect and as representing the architects community, including all the engineers, you know, we failed to deliver something like that we want to conserve. I don't even know if the Falling Waters, what Frank Lloyd Wright built, will ever live its time. They might want to demolish that also sooner or later. So what is your sort of, coming from the perspective of pedagogy, what is your position to understand these situations? Where have we all failed together?
That question is to
Sonam.
To me. Yes. So I think the main difference that has been in the way in which we learn things recently has been earlier we had apprenticeship, right? Which means holistically you would learn and understand a concept of philosophy, and then you add in things from your own curiosity to it, and that is how new innovations happen. After which we got into, you know, like specializations, and we said that, you know, there has to be an architect, there will be a landscape designer. So even in those fields you had these multiple specializations, and then you kind of said that you go dive deep into your specializations rather than understanding the whole or the big picture, and then each of these specializations will interact and communicate with one another. And I think that is where why recently we've understood that specialization is a problem. So if you see most of the recent you know, firms and offices which have been set up, they call themselves multidisciplinary explorations. They flaunt their collaborative attitudes, and I think that is what has, you know, when one realizes that this compartmentalized. Yes.
To add to what you're saying, we become doctors.
Yes, the ones with PhD.
Yes, and we become doctors where we know the heart, but we don't understand the lungs. We understand the lungs, but we don't understand the kidneys. That doesn't work in architecture.
Let me invite.
Oh, that's a blow on Sonam. It's a reality.
No, let me.
But in continuation with this, there is also a question that Mr. B.S. Narayanan is asking. So he's talking about that in collaborative efforts, and I'm taking this from the chat. I hope it's all right.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. So he was saying that, you know, of course, it's a collaborative effort between architects and engineers, which kind of ensures the success of a project. But there are lots of changes that are made in codes and standards, and sometimes he feels, I'm not sure if he's an architect. I think he's against.
B.S. Narayan is one of the leading.
Sonam is an MEP consultant.
Okay,
he's one of the tall figures.
A leading consultant from Bangalore.
Okay, that's really nice to know. So he says that sometimes there are the changes that are made in codes and standards. Architects are not in the knowledge of the same, and this whole disparity where architects says that I'm only interested in the aesthetics and the planning and the utility of the product, and this department is someone else's. I think this question can be reeled into the discussion as well.
Before it's been reeled in, BSA, are you on chat box or are you on real? It's on chat box.
Chat box. Should I bump him up?
Yeah, bump him up, because BSA, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to have you trigger these discussions. Are you able to bump him up?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there.
BSA, welcome. Rajiv here.
Hi, Rajiv. How are you?
How are you doing?
Oh,
you
fine.
have triggered the question which I wanted to ask, but since you're an MEP consultant, you have all liberty to ask. Whom should we address this question to?
To all my architect friends.
Architect friends, Matthew. We have Matthew, the experienced one. Matthew BSA is my friend.
Sonam, this is exactly what I said.
Yes.
The problem that's happening is like, that we are not able to connect. And we are not abreast as architects. When I say like, Ravi will not agree to that, and Ravi will want to fight a battle with me on that. But yes, we are somewhere switched with the glamour and the splendor and the creativity that we want to throw on the table. But we are not upgrading ourselves with what is required to do with going with a large scale. Because start of my conversation was these MEP systems are the life and nerve of the building. It's like, you're saying your heart and lungs are not required, your kidney is not required. All we need is your skeleton and your body. It's a dead body. So if this body has to be kept alive, you need that organs to function. And if these organs are to function within a 6-foot man or a 15-foot man, they have to have certain capabilities. So when we're building a 15-foot man or a 30-foot man, we need to keep the splendor going. And that is where the disconnect is happening. So the architect is saying, okay, the world is evolving. We can do this, we can do that. But what requires to sustain it is missing. And that is where I come back to the fact that the universities have to get connected. It cannot be taught or looked in isolation. Or we will have specialists like what happens in the medical field today. You came in here, you're sick. Oh, it's not concerning your heart, so go to the next specialist. It's not concerning your liver, go to the next specialist. By the end, we are dead. You want to have a dead building? Great, this is the approach. Otherwise, collaboration is the way forward. And that means if an architect is going, he has to understand the basics of MEP. He has to understand the basics of structure. He has to understand the basics of ID. He has to understand the basics of landscaping. Every individual will be an expert in his domain, but will never be able to collaborate.
Let me just
I think, Ravi,
pitch
you
in,
have to come in here.
Matthew, I appreciate what you're saying. You sound like a church father. Saying everything right and, amen, everything will be normal, everything will be accurate. But that's not the fact of life. Let's agree, we are not high priests sitting here and saying like...
No, I agree, we are not high priests and we are not passing the condemnation. We are not from a Jewish nation. So I am with you on that. So we are not talking Jewish architecture in a Muslim world. And neither are we going to the Hindu Ayurvedic temples, like, why the gutter system worked and why the Broggles work. The Broggles work because it understood the climatic conditions. The gutter system worked because of the reason. I agree with you.
I invite B.S. Narayan here. We both go back for many, many years having worked on projects, Narayan. So, there's a lot of fire that erupts on the site. I'm not saying that is the reason because of incapabilities or not information, the information on the drawing is insufficient. Is there a matrix or there is a whole, the concept of thought process, have we gone wrong? What do you think, Narayan? I mean, you've lived a life, a legend. Yeah.
Yeah, your life has been to MEP.
Yeah, Ravi, it's not that, what I mean to say is what my question was, nowadays the codes and standards have been changed drastically. And even in India, the codes and standards are almost like comparable to international standards now. See, what I mean to say is, when I'll take an example. When we get an architectural drawing, the basic drawings, so we find a lot of things like the adequacy of staircase and all those things we check, exit routes, exit ways, adequacy of staircases and all. So, when we go back to the architects and then when I say that, oh, I need a staircase here, I need this, I need that, and oh, sir, my architecture, everything will change. And I don't have place to accommodate one more staircase. So this kind of things, it is, we are dealing with this kind of things every day. What I mean to say is a basic, the basic education or the knowledge of the services and then the basic knowledge on the codes and standards will definitely help for both architects as well as the engineers, design engineers, to solve the problem and to work out a beautiful system altogether.
Ravi, I would like to come here saying that rather than passing the question on to the other panelists, you should be the one answering this, because having spearheaded many international projects like Loopin and all that around the world, you tell me whether you will listen to the MEP consultants. Please don't pass the question around. I would like you to answer that.
I'm not going to be a church father. I'll tell you, an architect has a certain occupational aspect that he has to dwell in that space of creativity. He has to bring about a knowledge change to how things will program. I don't think he should be a project manager, point number one. He must not be a drawing checker. I don't think he should put the responsibility of qualifying the drawing information accurately to an architectural practice. If given a choice, I would love that to be done that way. So that, the project manager must explore a team which will execute good quality shop drawings. How much ever, if you want to do steel engineered buildings, trust me, I'm not saying architects or engineers or structural engineering consultants don't have the ability to draw the last bolt to detail, but how a shop drawing can be executed by an experienced, contractor is always immensely accurate and better than what a consultant can draw. The same even in the practice of engineering. Unfortunately, our practice does not include making a lot of engineering drawings by contractors, because there is a certain, paradigm shift that happens when it goes to execution, and only construction drawing qualification can make it happen. We've done projects. I'm doing Boeing, for example, for India, where they're doing 100% drawings before even the construction starts. We are giving 100% drawings to the contractor L&W to execute every bolt, every pinch of the interiors, landscape, everything, and the devil there is only the client, because he suddenly, as the building comes up, gets an idea, suddenly says, oh my God, this is something that we could have also done and wants to add on. It's the human occupation. So
Matthew, this is India. He has the specification laid out from A to Z. So what are you talking?
We presented 2,800 drawings on the board to the contractor to quote one lump sum. And this is possible in this part of the world. So having said that, I think more and more when I introspect, Rajiv, to answer to your question, an architect, must specialize in that space that brings joy to his occupation. And we should not mix it up. I did mention architectural engineering. That's why I called it an oxymoron, because I don't think they both can be parallel. I mean, they can be at a conceptual level. What do you think, Arun?
Master builder.
I don't, you are in trouble. Yeah.
Many years back when I visited the Urban Development Ministry of Oman, when we were doing the Caboose, 475,000 acres of development at Sultan Al Caboose, Muscat, I saw this huge poster in front of his office. It said that the architect will be ordained with the responsibility of executing and designing and evolving creativity. Nevertheless, if the whole project and the program fails to occupy the human occupation, he'll be guillotined, it said, so it's
I think you're in a bigger trouble now.
So it was very clear that the Omanese government put that poster saying if the architect fails, he will be guillotined. So the same, if he is successful, he'll be put on the pedestal and everybody will share the joy of having completed the project. But if something goes wrong, he will be spat on. So therefore,
that's a great last line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have to re-evolve the great lines of consultancy. I think engineering practice has to come about trying to force contractual obligations to make shop drawings and make as-built drawings complete on the project, and then only program to the rest of it. Unfortunately, we dropped the hat. A good friend of mine, Swati Interiors, who executed the whole interiors of the Ambani's house, he did Lupin Laboratories, Rajiv said, talked about it. It's one of the best laboratories built in Asia today. Now, when I look at him, when he executes projects in Dubai, he has to do 100% shop drawings for the interiors. I mean, that's fabulous. I think that practice has to come about, in the way we delegate as project managers to a specification document and not hold the architect on noose. What do you think, Matthew?
Okay, I'm going to speak on this. You brought this topic of shop drawings and everything. Everybody wants to do shop drawings on his discipline. And they want to detail the shop drawings respective to the discipline. But who takes the ownership of coordinating between these various disciplines? And what happens is, since I'm going to be very blunt, Ravi, you will not like it, but I'm going to say that architects have a certain piece, the engineering disciplines have got a certain piece. Nobody wants to, at the design stage, spend that money to delegate man hours in terms of what is the effort required between that going forward and backward to get the thing streamlined. Because finally, it also translates to a bottom line. What do you want to earn as, you're working for a fixed fee for a client. So that fixed fee is what it is. And if you delegate more resources to get this coordinated, you're losing it. So the easiest way for everyone that I see, and that particularly comes from this region, is, okay, the client hires an architect, or he doesn't call an architect here, he calls a consultancy. He hires it for a fixed fee, and he's paid that money. Now, this fixed fee is disseminated between the disciplines, and nobody wants to spend a dirham or a fill more than what has been contracted to. And coming to that, it is so what do we do? Okay, if I want to fix this, I need to go back and get my designer to work on it. If I need to get this, I need to go and get my mechanical engineer to fix this. If I need to do this, I need to get my electrician. Why waste money? Kick the ball down the line. Let the contractor take the responsibility of it. We will write a very beautiful, we term it here as project managers, a division 1 clause, or a buildability clause, or a constructability clause, where everything is passed down to the contractor. And the contractor, day one, he says, when he qualifies for the tender, he says, sorry, what you're giving me, I'm going to build. I am not the designer on this job. You have given me a set of documents, I need to construct on it. And this document is not working. And then we get into a humongous fight where we say, okay. And the saddest part in all this is the risk is borne by the client. We call it risk avoidance, risk transfer, all these big statements we make. But finally, who gets saddled with this risk? And who pays for this risk? It is the owner who has contracted it. So the contractor doesn't move. Project manager comes in, makes a recommendation, says you have half-code documents. Now this thing is not working. We fix it up. We pass it across. And the employer looks around and tells us, why did we get into this position? Yes, we got into this position because you went in for a fixed fee. And there was an architect and engineer whose bottom line was hurting. So he said, let's kick the ball down the line. And the contractor now stands and says, I'm not going to deliver it. And then we find a middle path, we fix it, we move forward, and the whole saga continues.
Thank you, Matthew. That's a good comment. And that's the only time we thank a project manager, when he makes a recommendation to triple the budget of the project.
And that's what happens. And Mr. Mahendra and myself have been specifically, been involved on a project where we went through this whole story. But Mahendra was magnanimous.
And Mahendra lost more hair in the project.
No. Mahendra was magnanimous, where he said, I am going to work with a consultant because otherwise this consultant will screw me. And so I'm going to work with him. I'm going to do everything for him. I'm going to design for him. And I'm going to deliver for you.
He was never so kind with suppliers. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
I would like, Ravi, if you could take in some panelist questions.
Yes. Sonam, thank you. Please go ahead, and can you include some of the panelists' questions, or how would you want to steer the conclusion?
Yeah, yes, we have one question and one comment from Mr. Vivek Galande. He's saying that all MEP teams start analyzing after the architect's vision is put up. Now, with design and build being the norm to save costs, where would an architect's vision really come in?
I would leave it to the architect of the group.
I'll take the answer, and anybody else can add. See, design build does not necessarily mean that these questions are excluded from the program of making the building. Even at a position where the architect is obliged to build the architecture, I think he will, bring in his caliber and ability of creativity into play. Bangalore or south of India has been one of the most beautiful examples. When you look at how Total Environment, for example, builds in southern part of India, it's spectacular. Probably they have delivered better projects than any other developer, in the whole country, to give sort of green edge buildings, gardens which are included in large apartment blocks and make the buildings more sort of earth connected. I'm not very sure how accurately it is sustainability agenda accurate, but having said that, it is possible. So it's just in the idea of the mind and the creative impetus that one individual can exercise. So even in your design build jobs, you will exercise the same program of control. You just internalize it, and you can build the most fantastic, spectacular buildings and not make it very, very engineering accurate and not architecturally very intelligent.
I think Matthew can add something to it.
You want to go? Okay. To add to it, like, the way I see design and build program, I'm not exactly sure in the context of how India operates on a design and build program. But design and build here is more from a perspective where the owner wants to transfer his risk onto the contractor. So design and build program doesn't necessarily work unless there is a robust brief that is being prepared along with the concept architect. So there's an architect who prepares the concepts, and that's followed with a robust brief in terms of performance specifications on what the employer wants. Sorry. Okay. So that's where it is like, So design and build is, while we try to do it as terms of like, avoiding risk, but it doesn't necessarily work in general circumstances unless you have a proper scope document, which clearly expresses the ambitions and has a concept drawing and the performance specifications. Otherwise, it just tends to be under, like, kick the ball down the line, and that's where it stands. I don't know how it works in India. If somebody would want to explain that, that would be good.
I would like to ask Mr. Anbalagam, as an MEP consultant, what is your take on this, Mr. Kandaswamy?
Thanks, Ravi. And I've been a silent observer of what's been going on. And first thing is that as design and build in the Middle East, Matthew touched upon it, and it really, there is no transparency, particularly when it comes to the contractor, what they want to do in design and build contract, unless it is drafted the scope document and the clarity. There is bound to be a big deviation in what the client really originally wanted and what is being delivered. And the design and build contracts itself, the way it is being taken up, it's to speed up, and there is a time frame which they just want to shorten and to deliver it at a faster pace. But in the end, the client doesn't really get that, because most of the time during the handing over of the project, the battle comes in, because including the contractual, the values and everything which is to be taken up, so there is a big battle in the end in most of the projects which have been done over here in the Middle East. So effectively, the design and build doesn't get, the client does not get the benefit what he really envisaged in the initial stages. So that's the take which I would take as far as the design and build, the concept, how it is being applied over here. And prior to, one more point which I just wanted to just make was that Subraya, with Subraya, we have worked on multitude of projects, the number of projects over here in the Middle East. First thing is that the architects do not call the MEP consultants as sub-consultants. They are called as the co-consultants. Because if you consider that the MEP consultants are sub-consultants, as you said, so I think some of them touched the point. You tend to take a stick and try to dictate that the MEP consultant has to do this, that. Whereas in a co-consultancy, the integrated design approach, we have worked together and delivered much more successful projects. So that's one, I think it's very much prevalent even in India, because I've done some projects in India, and this is just as a comment and a note which I just wanted to make it. So that's it. And as far as the design and build is concerned, in my opinion, it doesn't work in the Middle East. It hasn't, because we have tried it in a couple of projects, and it hasn't really been successful.
Thank you. Thank you. Rajiv, I'll let you conclude the session. Thank you. Thank you all.
No, Ravi, as a moderator, you should be the one concluding the event.
No, I must thank the whole panelists. Thank you.
I think it's been a very interactive session, but honestly, the conclusion should come from a versatile gentleman like you, Ravi, because compared to you, I'm a novice. Yeah. So I think this session was good. It was interactive. We touched some soft points, but I think this is the first step. MEP consultant versus architects. B.S. Narayan is smiling. I don't know what the smile means. We have Mahendra smiling. I don't know what the smile means. Anyway, Sonam is smiling. I don't know what. Srinivas, everybody is smiling. So that's a good trend. So, Ravi, I leave it to your hands to conclude this very, very highly complicated subject.
No, I can only thank all the senior sort of fraternity that came from the industry to participate. Many have been on mute mode, many have been observers, but I can only thank Mahendran, Suresh Kumar, Narayan, Somani. Thank you, Mr. Somani, for being a patient listener. Subraya, and of course, Rajiv for spearheading the whole program. Thanks, Espa. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Kandaswamy. Thanks, Sonam. And thanks, Srinivasan. And I think Arunjot had to sort of exit out. He had a time limit. So thank you all. It's been fantastic. But I think for me, this is a moment or a posture of introspection. For me, when you read, The Timeless Way of Building, written by Norbert Schultz or Christopher Alexander's comments on the idea of the timeless way to build, I think the new centuries have never been able to resolve that idea accurately. Most of our architecture seems to only perceive the idea of creativity more important and the responsibility of the nature of that building to the planet. When you go back to the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, or you go back to the Egyptian or the Greek civilizations, or even the vernacular traditions of mythological contents that India built, we were responsible to our religiosity, our people and our countrymen, and the land that we habituated. That's why even when you go to places like Udaipur or Jaipur, you still see massive reservoirs of stormwater and rainwater management tanks that have been already built below their beautiful edifices or palaces, which we seem to have forgotten. There was a very responsible way of living that our culture had imbibed, and we have lost that in the new millennium. So I can only urge the practicing community and the teaching community to sort of, invoice a wake-up call and see how we can build timeless. Thank you.
I would like to conclude this session by thanking all the panelists, and I would like to especially thanks to Mr. Ravindra Kumar, because I remember in Dubai he came for a session for an International Federation of Interior Designers where they were talking about the future. So Ravi's subject was to talk about the design in 2070. And what Ravi did was all the panelists, 14 of them spoke about the future. And Ravi said, I don't agree with the subject. Let me go back to the old age. Let us start going back to the design of the old. I wish I had my own design where we do all the things our own. And I would like to go back to the architecture of the past, not to the architecture of the future. He had a big fan following in Dubai, in the International Federation of Interior Designers Architects. I was not very happy about it, but still that stays. So with this note, I would like to conclude. I would like to call Mr. Somani again, because you have been here with us. I would like you to pass the concluding remarks, and I would like to exit the line. No bad words about me, Somani sir, please.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Okay.
It's been a wonderful session for me for learning. One comment I like to make, instead of working in silos, let us be new cars who talk to each other.
That's a good one. Thank you. Thank you, Somani sir. Sonam, I will allow you to close the session with your comments.
Yes. Thanks a lot, everyone. It was really an engaging interaction. The audience responses were also interesting. It was a wonderful afternoon. And we look forward to seeing some of you or most of you again tomorrow afternoon for the session on high rises.
So tomorrow we have a session on the complexities of plumbing design in high-rise buildings. We've got a very eminent panel who has designed 2 of the 3 mega tall buildings in the Middle East. And that's one thing. Anybody would like to be on the open forum? Mr. Vinay Gupta, would you like to add something?
Hi, Rajiv. Very, very interesting discussion. And I personally feel, yes, it has to be a collaborative work. And for tomorrow's session, Rajiv, you could probably, any of these panelists, if they would like to also join in tomorrow, they can be on the
Yes, I have already
screen.
sent them the invite. I would like to invite you for tomorrow's session. We have already sent you the invite. And I would like to thank you, one and all the panelists. It's been a great honor to have you between India and the Middle East. And I pass on the baton to Mr. Varun Tandon, our Senior Vice President, who is the main force between these events to conclude this event and exit out of this platform. Varun, over to you.
Thank you, Rajiv sir. Thank you for the hard work. Thank you, everybody. It was a great deliberation. And we appreciate you coming out, spending time discussing this important subject. We look forward to more future deliberations of similar sorts where we can have your participation again. And thank you once again. Thank you.
Thank
With
you,
the
everyone.
with the permission of all, this meeting is closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonam. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Matthew, why do you say thank you, Sonam? Say thank you, Rajiv.
No, because Sonam and Ravi, I need to pick up a discussion on architecture.
Thank you. Thank you, Rajiv.
Thank you. Somebody said thank you, Rajiv. Yes, Narayan, I love you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Amanji, you can close the session now.